Last week, I did a show called The Thinning of the QB Herd for the 2024 college football season. Today, I'm going to do a quick presentation on making just a couple of small adjustments to that list. This is QB Unfiltered, my take, the rethinning of the QB herd.
I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement.
Before the season started, I did individual shows on the quarterbacks coming into this season that were listed as the top guys in the country, and based on their performances from last year. And there were some guys that I missed. Okay, but I did about maybe 8 or 9 different quarterbacks and then just watched throughout this season and evaluated. And after week 10, I went back in and did a show called The Thinning of the QB Herd. That's a reference from the movie Friday Night Lights. Billy Bob Thornton, they talked about the high school football playoffs in the state of Texas as the thinning of the herd, which is just a great way to put it. And you can also, put that with college football quarterbacks too. You've got all these guys up here before the season starts. And then as you go through the year and you get to week 10, game 10, there has been a thinning. And the best quarterbacks separate themselves from the good quarterbacks. And then that good quarterback list, you got guys that have fallen down to the third level. So that's what I did. I had 3 groups. I had the guys that had elevated their game, had great seasons to this point. I put those guys in group 1. And group 2 were the quarterbacks that I felt were basically just status quo, meaning that they hadn't gone up to the next level, but they hadn't done anything or played poorly enough to drop down to group 3. And then group 3 was the quarterbacks that had dropped down based on their performance this year. As far as what the circumstances may be that would drop a quarterback down, there are things such as injuries. We've got some quarterbacks this year that just had bad luck with injuries. And then you've got coaching changes. If you bring in a different offensive coordinator or a different quarterback coach, that makes a huge difference in quarterback performance. And then guys, for whatever reason, just playing poorly. Okay, now these 2 adjustments have to do with this past Saturday's games. And the first guy I'm going to start with is Shedure Sanders, the University of Colorado. Now, when I did my thinning of the QB herd, I had Sanders listed with an asterisk because I had him straddling 2 groups. I had him in the group 2 status quo. All right. He had come into the season as a guy that was projected to be a really good player, and he has been doing that. And then I bumped him up and put him in the upper group also because at the time I said he hasn't done any of the dumb shit stuff that he did last year that I think hurt him and, more importantly, hurt his football team. And as it turned out, I spoke about 4 days too soon. So this past Saturday, Sanders and his Colorado teammates bebopped into Lawrence, Kansas, and promptly got their asses handed to them by the Jayhawks. Score was 37-21. Sanders had a pretty good game statistically. He was 23 for 29 for 266 yards and 3 touchdown passes. He also got his ass kicked throughout the game. And that just goes to show you, not only did he get sacked and banged up a little bit, but Kansas was going out of its way to put some hits on him that were kind of delivering a message. And that's the kind of stuff that happens when you're a high-profile quarterback who pisses off opponents by talking a lot of smack. And so Shedure Sanders, that's the way he rolls, and he has brought this type of attitude by defenses that go against him. He's brought that on himself. But because he got banged up in this game, because they were losing, he's getting sacked. In the second half, and this was after a sack, tempers flared a little bit. You had the players sort of huddled up around each other. There may have been a little pushing and shoving. So you got the referees that are stepping in and trying to separate the players. And Sanders, who is frustrated and most definitely pampered, he's got a little bit of an attitude. He unbelievably shoved one of the referees from behind with two hands. Boom, obvious shove. And it shocked the hell out of everybody, including the ref that was standing behind Sanders that did nothing after the play. There was no penalty called. There was nothing done by the head coach for the Colorado Buffaloes. There was no penalties from the Big 12 conference. And maybe that's one of Shedure Sanders' problems right there. Earlier in the show and last week, I had him straddling group 1 and 2 because he hadn't done any of this stupid stuff this season, or at least any stuff that I had seen. But that all ended on Saturday in Lawrence, Kansas. And because he lost his mind out there on the field and shoved an official, amazingly, unbelievable, shoved an official, he drops down now. And I wonder if this is going to have any type of effect on any of the potential NFL teams when it comes time to draft this young man. We'll see. Okay, and then the second quarterback that has to be adjusted is Mr. Jaxson Dart from Ole Miss. And this one hurts me because I had Jaxson in group 1 in the thinning of the herd. And I also said that he was going to be a dark horse for a Heisman Trophy finalist. All right. I've listed Cam Ward, Dylan Gabriel, Ashton Genty, and Travis Hunter as my 4 Heisman finalists. And I said Dart is going to be a dark horse or a 5th guy if they invite 5, or if something happens to one of the other 4, he's going to be the guy that goes. He's had a tremendous season, right? And Ole Miss is right in the thick of things. And they traveled to the swamp to play Florida this past Saturday. And against the Gators, Dart statistically was 24 for 41 for 323 yards and 2 touchdowns. And he threw 2 official picks. We'll talk about that here in a second. Now, he started the game off by going 10 for 12, but for the rest of the game, he was 14 for 29, and that's not good. All right. Now, it was the last 90 seconds of the game that really did Jaxson Dart in and the Ole Miss Rebels. Truly unbelievable. So at the 90-second mark, and they're down by 7, 24-17, Dart, for whatever reason, hoists up a deep ball vertical to a receiver who is triple covered. And he was probably the 3rd guy that was the most open on the route behind the other 2 of the 3 DBs for Florida that surrounded the ball. That was the first pick. Now, here's where the bad stuff happens for Dart. He goes to the sideline and he loses his mind. Now, they've got the camera on him as Florida is trying to get a first down to salt the game away. They're showing the game and the snaps, and then they'd go to the sideline to show Dart. And on the sideline, this is Jaxson Dart. Helmet down in both hands, shaking his head, punching the bench, yelling, throwing his hands up, throwing a fit, and he is checked out. I cannot believe that Lane Kiffin didn't have somebody go back there and say, will you have Jaxson come up here, please? Put his arm around him and go, Jaxson, if our defense holds them on 3 snaps, which I think we're going to do, we're going to get the damn ball back. So you better be ready to go. Not only that, but as I've talked about with Cam Ward and the effect that his demeanor has on the sideline and on the field when things don't go right, the effect that has on the Miami Hurricanes, because he's always even keel. Okay, you can't tell whether he just threw a pick or he just threw a touchdown. He's always the same guy, and his teammates feed off of that. What must Jaxson Dart's teammates be thinking now? Hey, we're down by 7. We may get the ball back, and our starting quarterback's over here losing his mind on the bench, not to mention the fact that he is now checked out. And sure enough, they stop the Gators on 3, make them punt, get the ball back, and now with 24 seconds to go in the game, he throws his second pick. All right, and it was pretty obvious when you're watching this on TV that when the guy came down for Florida with the ball, he didn't possess it as he hit the ground. It was going to be an incomplete pass. Jaxson Dart didn't know that, however. So he proceeded to go to the sideline and do exactly the same thing that he did on the first pick. Helmet in hands, punching the bench, wailing and moaning. So sure enough, they overturn the play, and Dart is back on the field now. He's throwing 2 picks. One of them counted, one of them didn't. He's mentally checked out and gone, and he immediately on the first play throws his 3rd pick in the last 90 seconds. Game over. Totally, totally amazing. Okay, so week 12 is coming up. The stakes are getting higher and the pressure is getting greater for these quarterbacks. We're going to see another rethinning of the herd, possibly after this next week. Elite QBs play at elite levels in big-time games, and that's what we've got coming down the stretch here, trying to get into the playoffs. Okay, so if this thing plays on Wednesday, have a great Thanksgiving, everybody out there. And if for some reason it airs the day after on Friday, I hope you all had a great Thanksgiving with your families. Okay, hit that like button. If this is your first time to the channel, subscribe to QB Unfiltered. I greatly appreciate it. And this is QB Unfiltered. And remember, always throw the ball short to guys who can score. See ya.
I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up.